Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the sixth and final installment of the Institute for Future Legislators virtual series. My name is Megan Dias, and I'm the program coordinator for the Institute for Future Legislators at Ryerson University. Before we begin this event, I'm just going to give a few housekeeping notes. So first of all, as you should have heard with the voice welcoming you here, this meeting is being recorded. We'll be recording the first part of this meeting, so we'll be recording the panel and the panel discussion. When we move to the more interactive part of the meeting, we will stop the recording so everyone can maybe feel a little more comfortable to participate. Activity in the chat is not going to be recorded at all during this event. The chat is now open, and so I ask that you all introduce yourselves, say hi in the chat, tell us who you are and where you're coming from. At various points during this event, we'll also have polls popping up for you to answer and engage with, so please keep an eye out for that. At the end of our panel with our all-star alumni, we'll be having the opportunity to ask them questions. So the way that's going to work is if you have a question you'd like to pose to them, just send me a private message through the Zoom chat, and I'll put your questions into queue and then let you know when it's time to unmute yourself and ask the question. Or if you prefer, I can ask the question on your behalf. And then just finally a reminder, through both the panel and also kind of the interactive component of this event, please be respectful and mindful and kind so that we have space for everyone to participate in this. And now I'm going to turn it over to Patricia, who's going to get us started.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the final installment in the Institute for Future Legislators virtual series, a collaborative initiative of the Faculty of Arts at Ryerson University and the University of British Columbia's Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we meet today virtually, scattered across the country on traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. Myself and others connected to Ryerson University are located on the territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat. It's covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty, Treaty 13, and the Williams Treaties. Our partners at UBC are located on the unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples of the lower mainland of British Columbia. And you're joining us from various places right across the country, so I ask that you take a moment to reflect on the privilege of being where you are and to acknowledge personally in your own way the peoples on whose lands you're situated. We should be struck by the scale of our debt to Indigenous peoples, whom we should acknowledge today and in the days to come. At Ryerson, democracy is at the forefront of scholarly research and community engagement. The theme of democracy is embedded in the university's academic plan and strategic research plan. The Faculty of Arts is home to the Democratic Engagement Exchange under the leadership of John Beebe and their Jaroslawski Chair under Dr. Sanjay Ruparelia. In the near future, we'll be announcing a Canada Research Chair in Indigenous Democracies and a Canada Research Chair in Democracy and a Migration in a Decolonial Setting. With a particular concern about the economic well-being and wider experiences of our students, we've also recently launched a youth worker hub, part of a larger project on democracy in the workplace. Last summer, in partnership with UBC Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions, we held our inaugural Institute for Future Legislators at Ryerson. Some of our alumni have joined us today and will share some of their insights and experiences on their successful experience and partnership. So like our UBC partners at Ryerson, we share common goals of building inclusive leadership that brings diverse voices to the forefront, ensuring representation at all levels of society, including holding seats of power, and encouraging democratic engagement across communities. We're living in times that require tremendous courage, strength, compassion, and action. And I know that you join us here today because you too are committed to this. I'll close by thanking you for joining us today and for your commitment to democratic engagement. I'll now turn it over to Allison Mcfarland, incoming director of the School of Public Policy at the University of British Columbia. Over to you, Allison.
Thank you, Patricia. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Mcfarland. As Priscilla said, I'm the incoming director of the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at UBC, and I'm delighted to be here to welcome you all to this session. My family and I are relocating to Vancouver from the US, and we're currently quarantining in Winnipeg in Manitoba. So we are beginning to make our way west. Our school, the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs, is an interdisciplinary hub of innovation and learning. It draws on the expertise of university institutes, research centers, and faculty, and invites collaboration with global and local communities. We're home to the master's program in Public Policy and Global Affairs and the Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions, otherwise known as CSDI, which supports publicly engaged research, teaching, and knowledge sharing on democratic practices and institutions with a focus on citizen engagement and participation, constitutional governments, and traditional regimes. Under the directorship of Max Cameron, the center created the Institute for Future Legislators 8 years ago, and we're thrilled to see it thriving both in Vancouver and now in Toronto, with the enthusiasm and skill of our friends at Ryerson. This year has certainly brought a lot of new challenges that I know you've all experienced in terms of program delivery across our school, and has focused us to adapt and think creatively. This year's also highlighted the importance of smart and strong leadership in Canada and across the globe. And lack of leadership may be something that characterizes where I've just come from. These trying times have only strengthened our commitment to the mission of training good leaders for the future, and I'm sure these virtual IFL sessions will never replace in-person programming that we'd be preferring to offer, but the CSDI and Ryerson teams have put tremendous energy and effort into bringing you a taste of what's in store. So I wish you well.
Thank you, Allison. So as Patricia and Allison have noted, this is the last and final session of 6 that we put together to sort of replicate some of the content that we would normally have in the Institute for Future Legislators, either in Vancouver or in Toronto. My name is Jerry Beyer. I am the acting director of the CSDI at UBC, and along with Max Cameron, helped to originate this program, and we've been doing it now for several years. The 5 previous sessions we had over the summer were recorded and are really a goldmine of, I think, fabulous insights on the topics that we would normally address and the substantive sessions that you'd find in our program. But as Allison said, there's no replacement for the in-person, and so we really encourage people who are keen to watch this space, because we hope, and I think both teams do, to offer full in-person programs next year, and you can learn more about that from our websites, which are on the slide in front of you. So those of us joining you for the first time, the very briefest of introductions to IFL. It's a program myself, Max Cameron, Rebecca Monorat, and the team at CSDI created 8 years ago. It provides hands-on training and exposure to a repertoire of seasoned political practitioners to develop skills to be an effective legislator. It's a highly interactive program and results in amazing opportunities, I think, to learn about working with and supporting others who are like-minded in their desire to see a better Canada and a better world. So last year we partnered with Ryerson to bring the program to Central Canada, and we're just happy and thrilled with that partnership, and today's efforts are an example of that as well. So today what we want to do is showcase some of the kinds of things we would normally do in an IFL. We've done a little of that in some of the other sessions, as well as checking in with some of the alumni of our program who've either gone on to work in the political arena or somewhere outside of it. And we hope people leave the program having a better understanding of political institutions, but also how to work with others. And so that's a real theme that I think we'll touch on as we do that today. A little bit later, we're going to demonstrate for people who are new, or replicate for people who've done it before, one of our trademark IFL exercises. But first, we want to start with getting a little bit of a sense of knowing who's here. So a couple of poll questions are going to pop up here in a second. Megan, take it away, or Joey, and we'll see a little bit about where you are. So if you could please answer these quickly, and we'll take a bit of a look. So the West Coast is representing today, I'll tell you, from the what we see so far.
And no one wants to run for political office.
Heck no. That's a good way to ask it. So the poll is closed now. You can see a little bit of, so we got a number of people who are joining us as students and also just a couple of time zones, but some in the Atlantic, many in the Pacific, so all around. So thanks everyone for joining us wherever you happen to be. So the session that we're going to segue quickly into right now is what we typically call when we do it, the IFL All-Stars. So these are people who have participated in the program, both in Toronto and in Vancouver, and have gone on to things that we're really proud of and happy to see. And so it's a bit of a check-in with them, but also a chance to see how people are doing. So I'll mention their names quickly and then ask them to say a little bit about themselves. So Jamile Cruz is one of our Ryerson alumni. She's there, give a wave. Brandon Kober as well from Ryerson in 2019. And then Madeline Lalonde and Priscilla Omulo are alumni of the program from Vancouver. Jamile, do you want to say a little quickly something about yourself? And then I'll go through the rest of the list.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Jamile Cruz. I'm here sitting in Toronto. I'm actually the founder and CEO of IND 101. It's a consulting firm that focuses on inclusion and diversity strategies at workplaces. I did the Ryerson course because I'm very interested in politics, but I didn't have a chance to answer the poll. I would already spoil and say, I don't think I'll run for office. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for having me.
And Brandon?
Everyone, hopefully the quality of my video is okay. My very terrible work internet. I'm currently the manager of a consumption and treatment service, otherwise known as a safe injection site in Hamilton, Ontario, but only for one more day, as I'm leaving my role and starting at the group for my MBA in September, likely specializing in health services management. So I'm a registered nurse, interested in policy and politics, and I had wondered about what it would be like to break into politics eventually, and I saw IFLR was, it was advertised in Now magazine in Toronto, and I just thought, hey, why not? So yeah, I'm really glad I did it. And to answer that question about running for office, I ended up running for nomination last year, unsuccessful, but learned a lot, especially in combination with IFL.
Thanks, Brandon. Maddie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maddie. I am currently an account executive and trainer for a recruitment firm, so less exciting and world-changing. But I actually did end up running for office in Vancouver in 2017. And it was a really unique experience, which is the best way to describe it right now. I'm still processing it, I think, on a lot of levels. And I joined IFL just to continue to engage with like-minded people. I was all politics all the time in university, and it was great to be able to blend with people who had differing opinions from me.
Great, thanks, Maddie. And Priscilla.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Omulo. I'm a Sartlip First Nation. This is Ogutu, and he is 1 year old. I had done IFL in 2018, and I already knew I was going to run for the municipal election. And so it was a great way to build a really great family of people who were just as passionate about politics as I am. And I'm still connected to a lot of them today and other alumni as well. So, I'm currently working with Feminists Deliver, which is a collective of different organizations that are feminist-based, intersectional, and looking at how we could do this work in a decolonized way. So it's super exciting, and I'm actually working with Justine, who's also an alumni, and she is here. So hello, Justine. And so yeah, and as well, I put him in his future Prime Minister onesie because he is in a household that is very, politically minded, and people do like to see him in these different places and spaces. And I feel like it changes the dialogue a bit when he is there. So that is for me. I will not push him. He will be what he wants to be, but I'm hopefully predicting the future.
Well, we've seen versions of that in the past. So thank you very much. And he's, of course, very welcome here. So thank you for having him. So thank you all, 4 of you for joining us, or 5 of you for joining us, 4.5, let's say, for coming with us. I have a few quick questions just to kind of get a conversation started. So as many of you noted in your brief introductions of yourself, you have either sought a party nomination or went so far as to, be a candidate. How did that experience, maybe we'll start with you, Maddie. How did that, you said you've been still processing it. How did that fit with your kind of expectations before you went in? So you had a set of expectations before you went in. How did the reality of it play out for you?
Well, I was in a kind of unique situation because I went in knowing that I was going to lose in my seat. I think if every seat in BC went to the NDP except for 3, I would have run in one of those 3 seats. So I think my expectations in it were really about trying to engage with other young people and get kind of the overall youth vote more engaged instead of just staying in my riding. So I think in that way my expectations were met and exceeded. I still think all the time about my volunteers coming back, or even me talking to someone at the doors and saying, it's so nice to see someone my age running. I see myself in her. She gets my issues. And then on the flip side of that, there was such a crash after the election where, for, 60, 80 days, however long it was, people told me how great and brave I was, and then suddenly no one cared about me anymore. Was a bit of a shock. But
Brandon, how about you?
Yeah.
Thanks, Maddie.
I would also say that I knew that I was going to lose. I had every reason to lose. People were impressed by what I could pull together on very short notice, because vetting, as some people might know, it's a really insane process that can be lead to a lot of favoritism. But sorry, your original question just about IFL and how it influenced running. I was actually running while I was in IFL, so it was kind of like learning things about a potential job I could have if I was successful in what I was actively doing. But I would distinguish it like 2 different things. I feel like IFL was more legislatively focused, and the process of legislating kind of public life as opposed to the campaigning element, which was a different world. So both of them together made for a very educational summer.
What about Priscilla?
Yeah, so the experience overall, that's what your question was, right?
Well, just your expectations, what you had going in, and how much of that was changed or similar to what you expected, just the act of running.
I think so, he's very excited right now, which has me just like over here. But, yeah, I think that going into it, I was feeling very optimistic, but once I started the process, I became a little more pessimistic and unsure of what it could be. I was thinking, hey, you know what? POCO's going to be ready to have someone who's a woman of color, like a racialized woman, and let's work here and do this. But I think there is a lot more misinformation out there than I had expected about what it is to be an Indigenous person living off of reserve that I had no idea about. And so a lot of the questions I had gotten were not questions about my campaign, but more about like, who am I? What does this mean? Who is KFN? Like Coquitlam First Nation, and things that were unrelated. So I realized that there's a lot more groundwork that needs to be done, and hopefully we've been doing it over the past couple of years and continue to do that to have the community have a better awareness as to what it is to run for office, for one, and for 2, the different levels of government, and as well being a racialized person who's a candidate. Yeah.
Jamile, I'm not leaving you out because I know you haven't run, and you said you maybe aren't interested, but what about your expectations about what that would be like have led you to that and to sort of a different path?
I think a lot of the learning was around the experience for me. I think the exchange with everybody who participated, teaching or actually learning together was probably the most special thing about the program. I don't think there was other courses or other trainings that I've done in the past that there was the level of diversity that we found in the Ryerson course. And it was just very special from learning the different experiences and the different motivations that people have going to politics. From the learning we got, and I think especially for me, the experience of the women who came into the panels and shared their election campaigns or their time in office, as Priscilla was just placing there. I think it was kind of a reality check that unfortunately we're still living through, right? The past 5 months have been a reality check for everybody in terms of power and privilege throughout the quarantine and what COVID is able to make us realize, plus being a racialized woman, spending this time in Brazil and now being back in Canada and dealing with corporations on the discussion of inclusion and diversity has been first draining and exhausting, second eye-opening, and I think I relate all of that to politics. And similar to what Allison said, I spent time in Brazil, which is a country where it's showcasing now what a lack of leadership can do to a country. So yeah, there's so many things that turn me off. I think what I shared with you during the course, that I feel like the duty to serve, and that's where it would come the possibility of me running. It's still a very hard sell, knowing how hard it is for someone who looks like me or with my background to actually brave through the noise and through the educational piece and through everything that you need to go through to get to that place of wanting to make change.
Great, thanks for that. So, one thing that I think is part of the magic mix of taking the chance to run is confidence. Did any of you, feel that that you had abundance of confidence beforehand, or that you gained confidence at different points along the way? So not necessarily just in terms of IFL, but were there incidents or things that helped you sort of feel like this is the right thing? Maddie, you pointed to a lot of people telling you were brave, and did that help you kind of keep persevering and knocking on those doors in high-priced neighborhoods as a young NDP candidate?
Yeah, I would say that definitely helped to give you that kind of jolt of energy. It felt like every day was either the best day of my life or the worst day of my life, sometimes changing kind of hour to hour, minute to minute, maybe even. So it was definitely tough, but it also helped just being like a 22-year-old who didn't really know that I wasn't always right, and that like I wasn't fighting for necessarily the good guys versus the bad guys. Like there's a lot of gray area in politics and a lot of differing opinions. So that helped a lot too.
Priscilla, where does that confidence come from? Is it, what led you to take the first jump?
Oh, I don't know. The jump into running was.
Sorry, I asked it Priscilla.
Oh, sorry.
You did good, Maddie.
Yeah, I think that the jump into running it's actually community. I think that really helped build that for me. And especially my late husband, he did pass away in December. So even moving forward, thinking about what my next steps are, it's hard to think about that without him, because he was one of those people who would be like, you need to do this, this is why, and having this, this is what you have to offer, not even just like strategically as my partner, but what I had to offer to a community, right? And so I feel like that kind of trickled out into community, and then people would see, oh, look, here's what she has to say, and this is where it's coming from. And I felt like that was what was filling my cup with the confidence. But even during IFL, in certain moments that had happened, I was just like, completely didn't have the confidence. Even though I knew I was going to run, even just participating in the sessions, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Can I even do this? And so it was really helpful to have some of that experience within our group to be able to help me better understand where my areas of confidence are and where I need to do some work on myself and recognize what I do have to offer, and maybe where I need help and support, right? Because that's a part of it too, is that confidence is also coming from, I don't know everything, like Maddie just said, right? And trying to accept and own that and still say, but I have enough, that will be, right? Yeah.
How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I would echo everything that's said. I would also say, particularly for anyone who, is also thinking about running or thinking about doing IFL in the future, what IFL was great at doing was putting you into uncomfortable situations. Not all the time. It was a fun, awesome experience, and I would totally do it again. But you're only ever going to learn these skills by actually doing them. So, being in like a media scrum or being asked a really tough question on like a really hot topic, and you have to defend a point of view that you completely fundamentally disagree with, or you just have to rise and give a speech in front of all these people. That really puts you into that situation where you have to develop that confidence, kind of sink or swim. And I think by the end of it, you'll feel more confident. And that's how I felt throughout my nomination as well. I had no idea what I was doing, but we were just making it work. And, that by the end, I felt a lot more confident, like defeated at some point, but also more confident that I could repeat that in the future, having not learned and experienced it all. But also that I could be more confident in other things. Like, I moved to a new city, and within a couple months, I became the manager of my program because I developed those leadership skills through something like this that put you into uncomfortable situations.
That's a great jumping off for the question. I'll start with you, Jamile. How much of the work you do now, so you're talking about the different engagements you're doing with corporations and the rest, how much of that is a result of, not entirely IFL, but the kinds of skills that we hope to teach as well about, dealing with people who maybe don't share your point of view? How much is that an important part of the kind of work in the real world that people might be doing?
Yeah, I think what Brandon just mentioned of us having to actually defend different perspectives and different points of view of things that you don't necessarily believe or would stand in front of a group to defend was probably one of the best exercises that we could have done, because putting yourself in the place of someone else, right, to really try to understand why they would fight for that specific topic or why they're so passionate about that subject, by essentially immersing yourself and doing a little bit of research to be able to defend that point, also brings you that different perspective, allows you to be a bit more empathetic about that concept. So I do feel like I use that on a daily basis with clients, right? to just discuss the information that we're currently discussing and getting people to really understand different perspectives, or even trying to place themselves on other lived experience of people that they don't necessarily see themselves in that position or never really had experienced that in their lives. It's part of this world, and we need more of that, right? The polarization that we're living in now sometimes doesn't allow for you to do that, when that's how we're supposed to be doing at this moment, to really try to place ourselves in other people's perspectives. So yeah, I think the course did amazing on that. It's like improv 101, but with a little bit of research. I had James in my group, and James was like the research master that support all of us. So it was amazing from that perspective.
I mean, one thing we'll cop to is that we didn't necessarily plan to offer a program that taught people how to interact with one another. A lot of our intention was to try to give people knowledge of institutions and the rest. But I think, Priscilla, your experience, I think, was quite intense in terms of dealing with people, who you liked and who didn't like, and so on. Is there something specific that you can recall from that, or a skill maybe that you picked up as a result?
Yeah, and I mean, that's such a big question, because it's still, I was literally just talking about this 2 days ago and shared that experience with someone when we were talking about what is it like to run municipally when you don't have a slate, you don't have a party, as opposed to running with a party, and needing to be able to know the party platform and be able to work with a party in a different way, where people do have conflicting views. It does help you work with people who may not see eye to eye with you, but also recognizing that there's the overall umbrella, right? Like there's the whole system that you would work within, and that if you even disagree with someone on your own team, what does that look like? And so for me, that was an eye-opener as to how well would I do in a party system? Am I able to still hold myself to my own values and to my own accountability and my own voice as to why I even wanted to do it, and still yet be able to be within that system? And that's a question I still ponder to this day, because of that experience I had with IFL in that one particular situation, has me consistently addressing it and kind of breaking it down in my head still today. So thanks.
It wasn't, again, not necessarily intentional, so apologize for that.
No, it's a good thing though, because
right.
it keeps me accountable to myself,
Yeah.
right? It keeps me knowing what my boundaries are. So I think I don't encourage that experience for anyone else. But
yeah, a reality, and here's me, the political scientist talking again, right, is that politically we work in political parties, particularly in our legislatures, right? And so, there are always going to be compromises. Maddie, do you want to add anything to that bit of discussion?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a unique experience working with a party, and I know for at least during running, it was easy to just talk about the things that were the most important to me. It was pretty easy to bring it back to what I cared about. So if there was anything I disagreed with in the platform, but I know my year, I think as 2016 in IFL we talked a lot about the benefits of parties whipping the vote, the fact that platforms all vote together in Canada versus in the States where, people get more of a unique say vote to vote. And I think it would be challenging to balance that if elected.
So we're looking forward to having some questions from people who are joining us, but maybe I'll ask one more, but please do send them to Megan if you haven't sent them already. As an advocate of lifelong learning and the rest, we're all kind of keen on people finding more. I'm curious, from the standpoint of somebody who's been involved in each of your journey a little bit, what you've found to do outside, what else are you doing to try to learn more about the communities you live in and the challenges, the representational challenges you might want to take on? How else do you kind of inform yourself? I think it's interesting for me to know, but I think for all of us to know, how else can you do? You can do things like this, but are there other things? Brandon, let's start with you. What else have you done to sort of kind of keep your ear to the ground, I guess, is one way to think of it.
Well, I think there's the general things that are a bit like not as community focused. For a reason, I try and broaden to, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think everyone probably does, from like the usual haunts. And then I've been trying to get more involved with like the Riding Association locally as well, like volunteering campaigns in the last election. Matthew Green, our wonderful guest speaker. But for me, I feel like I'm in a bit of a different situation because I literally work at a community health center in like a very urban environment and run a very, politically contentious service. So every day is being extremely involved with community and different stakeholders and partners and safety, particularly with COVID. It's just been a whirlwind. I probably haven't been as involved politically as I would like to be, but it's just it's not like partisan politics or elected office. It's more the public service side of it. So yeah, I don't know, finding what you're passionate about and working really hard every day at it.
How about you, Jamile?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think through my work, I end up getting connected with a lot of the discussions that I would see in politics, or that I would essentially go into politics to continue to push that agenda. So I think I'm on a board of 2 not-for-profit organizations, which I work very closely to get through some of those notions. And I think one of the things that I saw throughout the course and that I'm trying to do is to really get the connection of private corporations with government and community organizations. I think that's one of the key things that we need to make it work, right? Not to leave it all for the government, but also bring to the corporations this social responsibility or responsibility around social justice. So yeah, I think that's where I'm focused lately.
Priscilla, you've been doing some of this work yourself, right? You've been doing some outreach. You want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah,
I was asking Priscilla, sorry. Priscilla's been doing some of that directly, yeah.
Yeah, so I think some of that outreach, one is with Feminists Deliver. So with my work, it's, we're trying to not be a political lobbying collective, but it is political in itself, right? When you're trying to work for the change. It's also been about doing some of the speaking. So, you know, like mentioned, it's about connecting with community in a way where with what you know. So we've done a 3-part series here in Coquitlam with the Tri-Cities Immigration Partnership on anti-racism. There's a couple of Black Lives Matter protests that I've went to show solidarity with and try to really connect Indigenous and Black, you know, lives. Both matter and both have rights. And as well, just, you know, engaging with different community organizations and really trying to amplify a lot of the work that's happening. So for myself, it's getting out there and saying, who's doing what and how can we share this information? So a lot of it is talking about, you know, anti-racism and about the response to COVID is especially important to me right now in how it's discriminating against people who have, you know, poverty, people who are, you know, racialized, and women very specifically are being impacted by COVID. So this is what a lot of the work I'm doing is centered around. Yeah.
Maddie, have you continued your educational journey for this sort of thing?
Well, it definitely took a long break. But then after I moved to Ottawa, I've been getting involved more on the federal side, joining my writing association out here, and kind of nice through work, similar to a few other on the panel, is I just get to connect with so many government stakeholders. We service the federal government, and my job is to go and meet as many of them as possible and connect with them and see their viewpoints. And I think something really interesting I've been learning a lot about the last year and a half is just the way that, you know, governments can impact the livelihood of these people. So they might be politically one way, but they're also looking like, do I maybe lose my job if this government wins? So that's been an interesting learning experience too.
Excellent. All right, Megan, you have a question or two to bring from the audience?
I do. So I actually have 2 questions. So I'm going to read them just because we're running a little short on time. I'm going to read both of them and then turn it to our alumni to answer. But they're both big questions, so I'm sorry I'm doing this to you. So the first question is coming from Justine, and she asks, with calls for more racialized people, particularly for women to run, is there space for white, cishet, privileged people to run, or should they be supporting people with marginalized identities to combat the power imbalance in Canadian politics? So that's the first question. And then the second question is from Miguel, and he asks, what strategies/approaches do you foresee or recommend in order to engage the electorate beyond the electoral cycle and rebuild the declining trust we're seeing between the people and government? So 2 really big questions. Does someone want to start us off?
I can go, or Priscilla, you put your hands up. Okay, so on the first one, I usually say there's a lot, actually. It's not about subtracting, it's about adding. So I think there's space for both and there's space for all, and we should be supportive of other groups, but also continue to have representation from our groups. I think we have lessons learned from different countries that put quotas out there and achieve greater success than what we have today. So I think we're too late on that game, just like we inform corporations to do. So I see government as the largest corporation we run here, so we should do that. On the second question, I think there are different groups that are trying different things, like Girls in Politics and all sorts of groups out there trying to get people more informed. I think I talked to many friends and many groups that I'm connected after I took the IFL course in terms of every Canadian should know a little bit about this. I think I had an experience of learning so much, and I think I talked to you, Megan, I talked to a few of people that we should have like a short series very similar to what you're doing with this 6 webinars to which actually get some of that learning to the general public, because yeah, we need people to know more. Like we need more information to get to a better place, right?
Of course, Justine asked a really hard question, and we will talk about this. But it's a really good question. And it's something that I've been pondering myself as well when I think about the next steps as to what I'm going to be doing when it comes to office, right? And I feel like there is an opportunity for white, cis, heterosexual women to, yes, amplify the voices of the racialized women who are wanting to run for office. Being an ally is not just about, about agreeing with what somebody's saying. It's about actually holding the space and knowing when to step aside. And I feel like some people are kind of skating around that, saying, but you're trying to push yourself further up than white people, and that you're trying to kind of make it sway, the power imbalance to sway. But that power imbalance is not going to sway in the racialized people's direction, because it's going to be a colonized system that we're working within that is set to oppress racialized people. So if we have women in a position that are able to say, look, here is a just as smart, just as, possibly, good candidate in our area, why not step aside and support that person? I definitely think that's a good place to be if you want to be a really good ally. The other question about the trust, that's a huge question with us as Indigenous people. There is a lot of lack of trust when it comes to government and police and other colonized forms of systems. And to build that trust outside of the election season is something that I've actually been planning and working with other people and groups on, and how to do that year round, how to do that in a way that says, this is how it impacts you. A lot of times I feel like people say, I'm not going to vote, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't affect me, or I can't make that change. So trying to find that education piece, but also that hope in saying there is a possibility. There's a possibility for us to have clean drinking water for all Indigenous people across Canada, for us to have access to education and healthcare in a way that's respectful. It's a possibility. So when you build that trust within community, then you can start building that trust within the police systems, the healthcare systems, and then government. But I feel like there's steps that need to be taken there, and the groups need to not work so separate. We actually need to see where it intersects. It's intersectional. And I think that's an important part for us to do when we're doing the work and we're doing the lobbying, is to see that we could lobby government and share our stories, but unless we're actually sitting in those seats, we're not going to make the change that we would like to see.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. Brandon, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So yeah, the first question, I'm, an interesting individual to answer that question. That's why I literally make space for people to answer it who definitely have more stake in the game in that way. Yeah, when I was running last year, I definitely had the thought, because my opponent was like racialized, and I had the thought, I need to meet this person. I want to speak with them and see, are they am I offering anything more than that person? I ultimately thought, yes, I could do a good job, and it's worth me running. But had that interaction went another way, and I thought this person is terrific and I would rather just support them. That was absolutely on the table and could have happened. And I think that's something I'm going to stick to, is really be strategic and thoughtful about if I ever run again, or if I'm ever looking to access a leadership position. First off, why? What are my intentions? Is it purely selfish? Is it more utilitarian for the greater good? Will that other person bring a perspective to the table that'll be more valuable than mine? Because definitely my intersection and its perspective is amplified way too much. So it's a lot of grace and asking for feedback, being open to new perspectives. And then the second question, if I'm remembering correctly, about kind of developing trust outside of electoral cycles. I think it's what I want to see in myself. I say maybe I need to practice what I preach, but for everyone, people need to have more political courage and political will to just speak their truth, speak what they believe, go to the protest. Everyone has social media, use that to advocate, but also listen, because we know that very quickly conversations can become polarized. But yeah, I would love to see more people have that courage to step up into leadership positions and speak.
Maddie, do you want to close us off?
Sure. I don't have a ton to add to the conversation. I think some really great points have been made. But I guess the only thing I'll add is I think it's really important not only to just lift more people up and make them feel like they can run and empower them to run, but also being really intentional about where they are running. Like I said, I ran in a seat that I knew I was going to lose, so I don't know how helpful it would be to put a racialized person there. So making sure that we're putting them in a position where you can actually win the election, or it might be a hard fight and you might lose, but like you're at least given a chance. Otherwise, it's just something that a party is doing so that they can say, hey, look, we met this quota that we set for ourselves. And then in terms of trust, just repeating a lot of what other people said, making sure that you take the time and you're listening and learning, and then using that to either help other people speak up or work from, for me, I'm very political, so working from within the party, going to those conventions, tabling the hard to talk about motion. Is tabling the right word? Putting the hard to talk about motions out there, table is the right word, and making sure that you're bringing this discussion to a broader audience.
Thanks, Maddie, for reminding us tabling can be a verb. You're in the right crowd, so that's fine. So this has been wonderful. This is why we like to check in with our all-stars, and you four are truly all-stars. So thank you very much for offering the time to join us. I hope you can stick around because we're going to transition, Megan, if I'm right, on our schedule. Is to now do one of our trademark IFL exercises, the Minister's Inbox 2.0, as we're calling it today. So very shortly, what we're going to do is put you into breakout groups. I think about 5 or 6, given our participant numbers. Hopefully everyone who's on can join, and our all-stars are certainly more than welcome to join. And what you're going to get when you get there is a Google document link, PDF, of a scenario of the day in the life of a minister. So in this case, the Minister of Education here in British Columbia, essentially, and all the things that come at a minister in the morning, the things they have to start to think about to be able to actively do their job, and the kind of expectations of the world outside that are looking for either decisions or for direction from a minister. So it's a loaded document full of different things that are happening. There might be some events that happen in the midst of your discussion. Unlike the traditional version, if you've done this before with one of our programs, everyone's just a minister. There's no specific roles for everybody in the group. You all just are trying to think of the best strategy for the minister at the time. So Megan can go ahead and share that, but thank you all, again, all-stars, for joining us, but please do stick around, and let's move to those. So I think, Megan, am I missing anything before we break into the breakout groups?
I'm going to unmute myself. I'm going to share the document now, and then we'll move everyone out.
Okay, and so there'll be a facilitator in each of those groups. I should have mentioned that. IFL facilitators, some of whom you may have run into before, depending on if you've been with us in the past. And they'll kind of lead you a little bit through the discussion as well.